Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Akash Varta. With this episode, I am launching a new series called Launch Vehicle Series. This Launch Vehicle Series will have multiple seasons of episodes wherein each season will be dedicated to each country's or one country's launch vehicles. So, I will be exploring each nation's space agencies launch vehicles that they employ or use or deploy in certain cases to fulfill their research and domestic space needs. The reason that I wanted to start this series is particularly one, I wanted to learn about all the launch vehicles that humans have developed over the years and the advances that we have made in terms of technology, in terms of reusability, so on and so forth. As this series is dedicated to our country in the first sense, I wanted to start off with ISRO. Then later on, I'll be moving to Japan. After that, I'll be moving on to Russia. And after that, I'll be moving on to US and then on any other space organizations or private companies that have launch vehicles as of now. The reason I am moving in that order is the space cooperation that India, Japan, and India, Russia have a shared history in terms of them helping us to develop our own Indian space program. We'll be learning about this as we go on into this long series. Now, when you talk about India's space launch vehicles, we have to start off with sounding rockets because that is where we first had our genesis in terms of handling rocket technology. But today we'll be specifically talking about, this is the first episode of Launch Vehicle Series India, in which we'll be talking about Satellite Launch Vehicle 3, our first official satellite carrying experimental satellite launch vehicle. As I was saying earlier, our space program started with sounding rockets. Sounding rockets is a very interesting technology, and I would like to dedicate a few episodes to discuss about the sounding rocket technology, the uses of sounding rockets, and how India had evolved its own space program out of understanding of sounding rockets technology. So we'll have a separate series for it. But for convenience sake, we are starting our Indian space launch vehicle history from Satellite Launch Vehicle 3, SLV3 as we lovingly know it. To get an introduction of this vehicle, our first experimental satellite launch vehicle, Satellite Launch Vehicle 3 was India's first experimental satellite launch vehicle. It was an all-solid rocket. It had 4 stages. It weighed 17 tons and had a height of 22 meters and was capable of placing a 40 kg class payload in low Earth orbit (LEO). The interesting part I found about when I was learning about this particular vehicle was it employed an open loop guidance system, meaning it stored the pitch program in its system, which was used to steer the vehicle in flight and along a predetermined trajectory. So before going into the technical details of the Satellite Launch Vehicle 3, let us understand the history of where our space program had its inception and where we had or at least when was the genesis of the idea for the idea of having our own launch vehicle and the program that was associated with it. So to begin with, the Indian space program from its inception has been a civilian program, which was not spun off from the military missile program, as you see in some other spacefaring nations. You may get a question here that, how can that be? Our true convention knowledge states that, or at least some part of our true conventional wisdom states that, most of the space programs or space agencies that countries possess now spun or had their birth from their military missile programs. You see here that is not the case with India, because India had a different trajectory in terms of its own space agency or its ambitions in terms of space exploration. Coming back to it, the Indian missile program, which we identify as Integrated Guided Missile Development Program IGMDP came into being in the year 1985. When you go back into the history of our first genesis of our own space agency or space program, it was much later than our civilian program. When Integrated Guided Missile Development Program was announced, by that time India had already flown its first satellite launch vehicle SLV-3. You may get again a question here, how come? So to give you a little bit of more background to get an understanding or a bearing of this, rocket development program in India began with the establishment of Tumba Equatorial Rocket Launching Station. It was situated or located at Thiruvananthapuram in the year 1963, much earlier than our guided missile development program, which was in 1985. The reason behind setting up of the Tumba Equatorial Rocket Launching Station was to conduct scientific experiments in astronomy and aeronomy using rockets purchased from outside countries. This is from where India first launched its rocket. It was a small diameter rocket. I think it was an Apache rocket, but as I said earlier, it is a sounding rocket. We are going to discuss this in the next series. So with this statement, we can clearly say that military missile program came out of our civilian space program, not vice versa as in the case of other countries. So in detail, our space history had its beginning on 21st of November 1963, where we first launched our sounding rockets. Later on in this episode, you'll be learning about the role the sounding rockets played in India achieving its target of having an own experimental satellite launch vehicle, the first one that is. So now moving on to the development of SLV-3, Vikram Sarabhai, the founder of the Indian space program, was well ahead of his time and was a pioneer that nobody can deny. Without him, India had no space program, or at least not in the sense that we wouldn't be here or we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for people like Vikram Sarabhai. Many great people played a great role, sacrificed a lot, poured their heart and soul and mind into our space program. But the genesis or the start or the flicker of hope or flicker of idea that Indian space program is started from Vikram Sarabhai, because he early on realized the role India can play in future in regards to the domain of space. Accordingly, as a part of his vision, he established a Space Science and Technology Center, which was entrusted with the sole job of developing all rocket and satellite launch vehicle related technologies. So by this point of time, we were getting very good with technologies related to sounding rockets. Remember, we were experimenting with sounding rockets out of Tumba Equatorial Rocket Launch Station near Thiruvananthapuram. The station located at Thiruvananthapuram was buzzing with activity and was at its zenith in terms of rocket technology. Because at this point of time, the facility was in the process of manufacturing propellant and manufacturing hardware for the Centaur sounding rocket series. Now, when we were so good at using sounding rockets to an extent where we were manufacturing our own, Vikram Sarabhai believed that scientists stationed out of the Space Science and Technology Center were experienced enough to come up with a design for a small satellite launch vehicle. So when he looked at and observed the progress that we were making in terms of understanding of the rocket technology, he realized that we were at a point of inflection where we can actually bring out our own indigenous experimental satellite launch vehicle. With that in mind, he brought together groups of scientists and entrusted them with the job of coming with the technologies and designs for our own experimental satellite launch vehicle. He was a pioneer, right? He saw the future when nobody could understand what was going on in the present itself. So, he always inspired scientists to come up with new technologies under very challenging circumstances. So, by the end of year 1967, after rigorous and intense discussions, debates, and whatnot on how the design of the vehicle should be, what technology should the vehicle have, how the vehicle is going to function, all the modalities, including the minute of the minute details, after rigorous debates, discussions, redesigns, reworks, what are the existing designs that they had brought up, how to better them, how to improve them, what are the problems in that, how to overcome those problems. And after going through every detail of the experimental vehicle designs that these scientists were bringing in, one final design was agreed upon for our first small satellite launch vehicle. After much debate and deliberations, they finally found a design. So, what was the design that our satellite launch vehicle will have? That is, small satellite launch vehicle will have. So, after all the discussions and deliberations, they set some benchmarks in terms of design objectives. So, according to the design objectives, the vehicle should be capable of placing a payload weighing anywhere between 30 to 40 kilograms in a 400 kilometer circular orbit from the surface of the Earth. During this planning stage, it was decided that the satellite will have a lifespan of 100 days, and it was decided that in 5 years' time, we have to have completed the construction of the vehicle itself. So, a group of very dedicated and enthusiastic engineers and scientists led by a man named Janardhan Rao, after studying multiple options that were suggested and considered, finally decided that the development will be centered on a 4-stage vehicle that will be labeled SLV-3. And it was also decided that all the stages of SLV-3 will have solid propellant as fuel, meaning it is a solid propellant vehicle. So why was solid propellant chosen and not liquid propulsion system? The answer to this question is very simple. Whatever the experience that Indian scientists and trainees had during this time was with solid propellant rockets. Because remember, we were very good with sounding rockets which had solid propellant as fuel. By this time, we became sort of experts in sounding rockets, and it made absolute sense that using a fuel that everybody is comfortable with using and handling in sense that we had an operational familiarity with solid fuels. We were getting inspiration in terms of rocket technology from other nations too. First, Japan, where our scientists were being trained in the first place. During this time, when Indian scientists were also training in Japan space agencies, Japan was also developing their own solid propellant rockets. Particularly, the Institute of Space and Aeronautical Sciences, ISAS, Japan's ISAS, where our scientists were being trained, which actually became part of JAXA now, they were also developing vehicles with solid propellant stages. And we were also getting inspired from United States. So it actually made good sense that when we are going for our first experimental satellite launch vehicle, our rocket is going to use solid propellant, and having all 4 stages based on solid fuel is implementable in sense. I may be wrong here, but that is how things go. When you have operational familiarity with things, you tend to use where you know how that particular aspect of your project is going to behave. So when the team that was interested with building and realizing the SLV3 in 5 years time were looking for inspiration in other places, they came across the Scout family of rockets which were being launched by Americans to carry and place small satellites in orbit around the Earth. So the Scout family of rockets were multi-stage rockets that were the first orbital launch vehicles to be entirely composed of solid fuel stages. It was the first and only vehicle of the type until the Japanese Lambda 4S in the year 1970. So we were getting a lot of inspiration from these launches in terms of Scout family of rockets from United States and Lambda 4S rockets from Japan. Remember, Japan was also helping us in training in terms of rocket technology during this point of time. The development of a completely independent satellite launch vehicle technology meant that our scientists were under a lot of tremendous pressure to come up with technologies. We weren't used to those technologies which are critical and integral to satellite launch vehicles. So our scientists were under tremendous pressure to come up with these technologies indigenously. So the development of SLV is the development of our space program, as in many new things we learned during the developmental stages of SLV3 helped in us developing much better launch vehicles and other space technologies for future. So the challenges where we didn't have technology, or the technology that we wanted wasn't fully developed in India as yet, and there were other lot of factors that were hampering our progress in terms of having our own satellite launch vehicles. But in a small hiccup in the process of us having our own satellite launch vehicle, in the December of 1971, Vikram Sarabhaiji passed away. After a small lull in our development program of SLV, the responsibilities were given to Satish Dhawan ji. Satish Dhawan ji's entry into our vehicle development program brought in a fresh breath of air that was needed at that time. Because when he came in, he made a lot of structural changes in terms of how we were functioning. Because he brought in various organizational and managerial changes in our development program and consolidated every facet of our launch vehicle development, or particularly SLV development, under the single leadership of Abdul Kalam ji. So when Abdul Kalam ji was interested with, he became the point person for the development of our SLV. We know Abdul Kalam ji as the father of our integrated ballistic missile program. That is, he is the reason we have Agni 5, Agni 4, Agni 3 and so on and so forth. That is how India has ASAT capabilities and ICMB capabilities. He is the father of that. Without him, we don't have our integrated missile program, and we don't have that much of security that we have now and today. So here rises the question, what were the technologies that we were indigenously developing for our satellite launch vehicle program? There were many. Out of them, few stand out. These are the motor cases that were used in our vehicle, the airframe control systems, navigation and guidance systems, thermal protection systems, and avionics. All of them are critical components, and we developed them indigenously from scratch. This is where the few systems out of many that we had to come up with fulfilling our goal of having our own satellite launch vehicle. And after going through the development hell that we went through to have our own launch vehicle, or at least a small satellite launch vehicle, the launch day arrived. The first flight of SLV-3 took place on 10th of August 1979, which ended in failure. So many of you know the reason was attributed to a stuck valve in the second stage reaction control systems, which resulted in draining out of the reaction control system propellant, and as a result of it the vehicle lost control and entered a spin, and it ended up in Bay of Bengal. So if you remember the famous video of Abdul Kalam ji explaining his introduction for the first time in his life to the concept of failure, you'll know the story of our first failure of SLV3. It's a lesson about failure. It is also an excellent lesson about how leaders behave when adversity is staring at them. Please, my suggestion would for you to is go to YouTube or any other video platforms and search for Mr. Kalam explaining his first failure. He'll be talking about the same exact moment, and all while showcasing the exemplary leadership skills of Satish Dhawan. That's a beautifully inspirational video, and I humbly suggest that you go and watch it once on YouTube. It's the first one that you'll find. Now, the mission was a complete failure. Because we lost the vehicle, we lost the payload. It was a failure. But when you ask me whether it was a failure or a partial failure, in my mind, it is a partial success. Because remember, the RCS valve failed in second stage. So the first stage was a success. Out of a 4-stage rocket, the first stage performed flawlessly. The failure came in the second stage in terms of an RCS leak, and that led to the vehicle being induced into a spin, and it lost its control and splashed down or crashed into Bay of Bengal, however way you looked at it. But it was a partial success in my mind. That is my personal opinion, and I'm not forcing anybody to think in that same lines. Now, after the initial failure, we have identified our problem, we rectified it, and the very next year, in July of 1980, SLV3 performed flawlessly and the mission was a success. This mission was dubbed SLV3E2, and it placed Rohini satellite RS-1 as a payload into the orbit. In the later episodes and in later series, that is in future, that you have to wait for it, and I'm truly excited to share this with you. I'll be going through each and every satellite that India has launched, both in terms of successfully and where we have failed, and both using our own launch vehicles, and in some cases due to the size and weight of the launch satellite itself, we had to rely on foreign launch vehicles. I'll be going through that also in the future. So tune on, subscribe, and please wait for it in the near future. And I promise you that the satellite series will be very interesting and worthwhile your wait. So coming back to the launch vehicle after the shameless plug, immediately after the success of our first SLV, in the year 1981 on May 31st, we went for a third launch of SLV3. It was dubbed as SLV3D1, and it was carrying a similar Rohini series satellite. Again, we tasted failure here because the mission was a partial failure in terms of that we failed to place the satellite in the correct orbit. The orbit of the satellite was too low than the designated orbit, and as a result of this, the satellite re-entered the atmosphere after just 9 days spending 9 days in the wrong orbit. So our final launch of SLV was in the year 1983, that is on 17th of April, and it was carrying an Earth observation satellite. Again a Rohini series satellite, and it was called Rohini RS-D2, which was a little bit higher than our earlier satellites, weighing around 41.5 kg, and again the designated orbit was a low Earth orbit. After this successful launch, after the successful launch, the SLV program was retired to pursue the more ambitious ASLV program. That is, after fourth mission, which was successful, but it became the last launch vehicle in the SLV series. We retired SLV series to pursue better things, and that better thing was ASLV, that is Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicle. In the next episode, I'll be discussing about the Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicle and its history in detail, how it had evolved over the years to a point where we had ASLV as our next iteration of our launch vehicle. Coming back to the SLV itself, the whole development of the satellite launch vehicle itself, or the developmental program of the SLV, from the point of us having the idea to have our own experimental satellite launch vehicle to the point where we were able to have our first launch, it took approximately 7 years for that development to take place. And as I said earlier, we came up with multiple new technologies that we developed in-house indigenously that helped us in realizing this dream of having our own satellite launch vehicle. Albeit a small one with little hiccups along the way, but we had 2 successful launches and we had successfully demonstrated we were capable of possessing satellite launching technology. That was the whole intent of this SLV program. And that is why we retired the program after 4 launches and we went on to pursue the ASLV launch system. The experiences, the immense wealth of knowledge, treasure of knowledge that we gained during the developmental phase of SLV did actually pave the way for our future launch systems and future launch vehicles and technologies. Because of the strides we made in SLV program, we can proudly say that we have GSLV and PSLV launch vehicles and launch systems in our possession, because we learned all those things during SLV developmental phases. PSLV being the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle and GSLV being the Geosynchronous Launch Vehicle. These launch vehicles are indeed the workhorses of our space organization, particularly in the case of PSLV, which had time and again helped India attaining self-reliance in terms of satellite technology and satellite capabilities. GSLV is going to be first step in India having Indians in space again, launching from our own soil, and help India become a part of humanity's quest to become an interplanetary species. I sincerely hope that you have enjoyed this episode and tune in for the next one where we will be discussing about ASLV. And I sincerely hope that you tune in, subscribe for the launch vehicle series, particularly Launch India series. And again, a shameless plug, I have a YouTube channel too, where you can subscribe, comment, share, and so on and so forth. If you are really in a giving mood, please click on the thumbs up button, click on the bell icon, and thanks for listening to an episode of Akash Varta. I hope the information that you get out of here will inspire you to pursue greater things in terms of your goals. And if you are new to the space idea, or at least Indian space program, I hope this episode had given you new information that you didn't knew earlier. And so I again repeat, this is the launch vehicle series where I intend to trace the lineage and development of Indian launch vehicles and other space agencies launch vehicles. This is the first episode of first series out of many more that are going to come in the future, and I hope you are along with me for the ride. Thank you. And just a reminder, a new episode of Akash Varta drops on every Tuesday at 4 p.m. IST. Once again, thanks for listening to Akash Vata. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Namaste.